The two functions that we're going to be covering here are the left and find. First of all, the left. The left will look in any cell that you choose and count up and return the number of characters that you define starting on the left-hand side, hence the left function. So if I want to just extract the first name here for Max Klinger, let's go ahead and type in equals LEF, there we go. It returns the specified number of characters from the start of a text string. So to go ahead and start working on the function, hit the tab key to pop it open, and there's the syntax, and the first part's in bold, and it says go ahead and choose the text, which is going to be in this cell. And then to go to the next part of the syntax, hit the comma, and now that's in bold, and then it says of the text there, starting from left-hand side, how many characters do you want to return? Well, I just want max, so that's 1, 2, 3. Type in 3, hit enter. That's fine, except if you want to do a copy and paste by hovering over the lower right-hand corner to get the black autofill handle and double-click really fast. That only works for those first names that have 3 characters. So what we can do, let me go ahead and delete those and double-click inside the cell here, is that we can combine the left function with the find function. And how the find function works is that when it's looking in a cell, starting from the left-hand side, counting up, and it goes to a certain point that we ask it to find, which is going to be the delimiter, that space there, then we want it to stop and return everything up until that point. Make sense? So we've got the left function going on, and then for the number of characters that we want it to return, we're going to delete 3 because we want to add the find, and there we go. Find returns the starting position of one text string within another text string. Let's go ahead and with it selected, hit the tab key to pop it open, and then it says, okay, what text do you want to find? Well, open quotes, space, close quotes, to fulfill that part of the syntax, then comma, and then it says within what? Well, it's going to be within that cell, the text within that cell, so select it. And for now, we're going to ignore that last part of the syntax, and we can get away with that. So once we're done with that, the order of operation is first within those parentheses, then go outside and go to, well, there's the left-hand side. I need to go ahead and add the other part to it. So I have the first set of parentheses, then the second set. Then go ahead and hit enter. Okay, there's max. So let's go ahead and select that in the lower right-hand corner, double-click really fast, and hey, that's sweet, because with the find function, it found the space and it stopped it, the left function, right at that point. And it returned everything from the left-hand side to that space. And so let's double check. Yes, everybody's first name. Nobody's being cut off. Now, if you're wondering about the other part of the function here, double click for the find. Let me go to the end here, where we answer the first 2 parts of the syntax here and not the last part. When you don't answer the last part, the start numbering, the default's going to be 1. So what that means is that it's going to go ahead and start looking for what we're finding, beginning with the first character. Now I could go ahead and add a comma, and let's see, we've got for max 1, 2, 3, then the character we're looking for is number 4. If I say go ahead and don't start looking for that space until after the first 5 characters and hit enter, we're going to get an error because it's looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's now looking at the K, and from the K point forward it's looking for a space and it can't find it, so we get a value error. So for the example here, we're just going to leave that alone. Double click and get rid of the 5 and the comma. The start number default is 1, and it's going to start with the first letter on the left-hand side in the cell and start looking for that space. Now, if you want to go ahead and keep this, but without the function, just the values, because when you select the cell, it's a result of a function, you can go ahead and click and drag to select it, right-click on the selection, copy it, and then in the same selection, right-click, and go to Paste Options and just choose Values. Now when you do that, you can select any cell here, and up in the formula bar, the function's no longer there, just the result of the function. Now when you double click inside the cell, notice that it's got Danny space. If you want to get rid of that space, well, let me hit the escape key. We need to go back to our function here. Let me double click. And at the end, just outside of the find function, we need to add a -1. So after it finds the space, we need to subtract 1 character, and that 1 character is going to be the space right there. Hit enter, then go ahead, hover over the lower right hand corner, double click really fast to do a quick autofill for the entire column here, and then of course right click to copy, right click to paste values, 1, 2, 3, select it, double click, and the cursor is right next to it. There's no space because we subtracted it once it found the space. Cool. As a side note, in addition to the find function, there's also the search function. So if I go ahead and let's undo this so we can go back to the function here, hit the escape key and double click inside of here, and let me delete the find. So we got the left function, and we've got the cell that we want to look in starting on the left hand side and the number of characters we want it to return. We can find the space or we can search for the space. So if we type in search, there you go, it's right there. It says it returns the number of characters at which a specific character or text string is first found, reading left to right. So we can also use this in addition to the find, at least in my example here. They're really similar in that fashion. Let's go ahead and hit the tab key to pop open the function. And look, you got the find text. We want to find open quotes, space, close quotes, comma, to go to the next part of the syntax within this cell here. And then you can start, well, it's the same as the find function. By default, if we leave the start number alone, it's going to start looking for that delimiter there, that space, with the first character. If we type in again after the first 5 or 6 or 7 characters, you can see for Max that's not going to work, because after the first 3, the 4th character is the space delimiter, okay? So we'll leave it alone. Then we'll click on the outside of it and subtract the space that we just found, and then go ahead and close the parentheses there, hit enter, and there you go. Go ahead and double click in the lower right hand corner to do an autofill, and then you can right click the selection to copy, right click to select the paste values, and then when you double click, you get the same results as we did with the find function. So as far as this example goes, you can use the find or the search. They're very similar in regards with what we had to do here. Now you could say, hey, wait a second, what about that flash fill? Yes, that can work. Let me hit the escape key and delete all that and type in Max, hit enter, then type in the next one, Bob, and then automatically Excel can see the logic of what I'm doing and hit enter, automatically fills in everything for me. But keep in mind, again, as I said in an earlier training video, that this works perfectly, the flash fill, if you're next to the column that you're extracting information from. But if you want to extract it and it's not next to it, like you're over here, down here, or the data somewhere else, and you want to extract it and get the results not in an adjacent column, then the functions will come in handy. In this training video, I want to go over 3 functions, the write, find, and len, because it's going to take all 3 for this example here to go ahead and extract the last name of all the people here. Let me explain. First of all, the write function. Hit the equals key on the keyboard, type in write, and you can see in the pop-up it's going to return the specified number of characters from the end of a text string. So it's going to start on the end or the right-hand side and count backwards or to the left. So let me hit the tab key once I have it selected to pop open the function, and it says, okay, where's the text that you want to go ahead and count up? It's this cell right here, and then to go to the next part of the syntax, hit the comma on the keyboard, and it says how many characters do you want to count from the end or the right-hand side? Well, I want to include clingers, so that's a total of 7 characters. Type in 7, hit enter, and that works, but the problem with that, if I want to be efficient and copy that function by hovering over the lower right-hand corner until I get the black cross and clicking and dragging down to the rest of the names, unless they have exactly 7 characters in their last name, well, we're not going to be able to see it, or we'll be able to see all of it plus the first couple of characters in the first name. So that ain't going to work. So keep that in mind. We're going to use the write function in conjunction with these other 2 functions to be able to get the last name out of all the names. And the other 2 functions are going to be the find equals find. And you can see there it returns the starting position of one text string with another text string. Let's go ahead and hit the tab key to pop it open to learn more about it. And what it does is it's going to find the text. And what text do we want to find? We want to find the space because when it comes to counting up with the write function, the number of characters, we need to say, look, stop at the space. So we want to find the space, and that's the text we want to find, the delimiter, by open quotes, space, close quotes, then hit the comma to go to the next part of the syntax, and it says, where are these characters at? It's within this cell right here. And then hit enter, and there you go. The problem with the find function is that it works against the write function. It worked in complementary to the left function because the find function by default is starting the count from the left hand side. while the right function is, counting from the right and going backwards. So when we're counting backwards, but the find function is looking forwards to find the space, if you just use the right with the find function, you're going to have issues. So it's counting from the left-hand side, max, that's 3, then it finds the delimiter of the space, that's 4, so we get a total of 4. Let's go ahead and double-click really fast on the black cross so we can quickly copy and paste the function all the way down. And then the other function here that I want to go over that will combine with the find function and nest it inside the right function to finally get our last name out of the cell here is going to be len, equals len, and you can see in the pop-up it returns the number of characters in a text string. So hit the tab key to pop open the function, and all it's going to do is say, okay, show me the text. It's going to be in that cell, hit enter, and it counts up every character within that cell. Now see if this makes sense after I go ahead and copy that function all the way down by hovering again over the lower right hand corner and double clicking really fast to automatically fill in that function. And tell me, what does 11 minus 4 equal? 7, right? And how many characters are in the last name? For Klinger, 7. How about for Appelman? What's 12 minus 4? It's 8. Wait a second. Okay, that checks out. So we have 8 for Appelman. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Sweet. So what we really need to do is take the total amount that's being counted up, subtract it from that, because it's starting on the left-hand side, and nest that within the right function. So let's go ahead and right-click on column G to insert our right function equals RIGHT, hit the tab key to pop it open, and it says where's the text that we want to go ahead and look up and return the number of characters. It's going to be in cell C6, comma. Next we want to go ahead and count up all the characters within that cell, so we're going to use the len, L-E-N, hit the tab key, and then it says where's the text? Well, it's within that cell. Go ahead and click on it to select it, and then be sure that you can see up here that we close the parentheses and we're still in that part of the syntax for the right function, adding up the number of characters. So we've got the total number of characters. We're going to subtract it, hit the minus key on the keyboard, from what it finds, and it's going to be finding it from the left-hand side. So let's go ahead and type in the find here, hit the tab key to pop open the function. What do we want to find? We want to find open quotes, space, close quotes, the delimiter of the space, and comma, so we can go to the next part of the syntax for find, and it says, where's this text that we're looking for? Well, it's in this cell, so go ahead and select it again, and then close parentheses, and then finally we need to add one more parentheses there so we can close the entire right function. So it's going to go ahead and take the total number of characters, which is 11, and then it's going to subtract it from what it finds, and the find is looking on the left-hand side, counting forward till it hits a space, and it's going to include the space. So we got 11 minus 4, which equals 7, and once we get 7 characters left, the right function is going to come over and say, okay, I'm going to count from the right-hand side back 7 characters, right to left. Hit enter, and hey, that's so fancy. Wait, let's double check. Let's go ahead and click and drag the black autofill handle to quickly copy and paste that function here down to the remaining cells, and ooh, that's nice. Now, what about using flash fill instead? If you watch my training video on it, you know what I'm talking about, so I recommend that you watch it if you don't. In any case, if I want to go ahead and delete this and say, look, I don't want to use the functions, I just want to use the flash fill by typing in Kleiner, hit enter, Appelman. To give it a pattern here, Excel looks at the database and sees logic and goes, okay, I'm not looking at this adjacent column or that one, because what you keep typing is coming over from the first column here, so I can see the pattern when you start typing in the second last name here that you're looking for the last name. So hit enter, and I'll automatically fill in the rest for you. Again, that's fine and dandy if you've got your database there and you want to automatically go ahead and extract by using the flash fill here, except if you're not within the database here where it's all organized that Excel can see a pattern, and you want to go ahead and extract that information into another cell outside of the organized area here or mini database, then obviously you want to use the right find and len functions to be able to extract those last names there. The 3 functions that we're going to be covering are the if, and, and or. First of all, let's work on the if. The if function will perform a logical test, where if it's true, it returns one value, or if it's false, another. So I want to be able to work on the commission here and say, okay, those people who made a total sales of $20 million or more will get a commission. So if it equals 20 million or more, either say in text, you get a commission, or you can actually do some calculations and say, okay, take the total sales and multiply it by a number. And if they don't get a commission, you can type in 0 or just say you're fired. In any case, let me go ahead and show you. Let's type in the equals key on the keyboard to start it and type in IF, and there it is. And you can see in the pop-up it's going to check whether a condition is met and returns one value if true and another value if false. Hit the tab key to pop it open so we can see the syntax, and we've got 3 arguments, 1, 2, 3. First of all is a logical test. So what test do we want to give it? We want to say that this cell, and you can see when I have it selected in the cell here, it's E6, has got to be greater than, so use the greater than symbol. And if you want it greater than or equal to, then always put the equals symbol after the greater than or less than, not before it, because if you put it before it, it's going to give you the raspberries, and we don't want that. So always after the greater than or less than symbol. So let's do equals, and then go ahead and type in the number 20 million. The next part of it is that if it's true, go ahead and do this. If it's false, do that. Now, if I want to go ahead and get a little bit more specific or a little bit more help than what I see here, right in the middle of the function, I can always come up here and click on fx, and it opens up the function arguments. So it's a little bit more clear to me. And you can see up at the top here with the logical test that it's true. That, let me click and drag this down below, that E6 is greater than 20 million. And it says true. So if I come over here and I do delete that and do less than, you can see it changes to false. So it's already doing the testing here before I go ahead and fill in the rest of the formula. If it's true, if it's false, do that. So let me go ahead and change that around to greater than. So if it's true, what do we want to do in the true value? Like I said, you can type in text, and if you do text, put it in quotes. Otherwise, it won't see it as text. But instead, I want to go ahead and click on the collapsible dialog box button and select that cell, E6, hit enter to open it back up, and say E6, want to multiply it, there's the asterisk, by 0.05%. And you can see the result that if it's true, it's going to be $1,674,088.90. Okay, if it's false, we can just type in 0 and they get nothing. And that's it. Go ahead and click Okie dokie, and there you go. Let's go ahead and see what it's going to look like for the rest of the employees here. By hovering over the lower right-hand corner of the cell that contains the function that I just entered until I can see a black cross, and then I can go ahead and double-click really fast to do an automatic copy and paste or autofill for that formula or function in the remainder of the cells. You can see that when I double-click on it, it's a relative reference, so depending upon where it is relatively speaking, instead of back in row 6, it's in row 9, so it's pulling over the total sales for Homer Simpson, this cell here, and seeing if it's greater than or equal to 20 million, and it's not. So you can see that if it's not true, you get a big fat 0. So is that greater than 20 million? No. Is that greater than 20 million? No. Now let's go ahead and throw in the and or functions. And let me go ahead and go over to the promotion column for Max Klinger. And what I want to do is I want to use the if function because, as you recall, you get a logical test. And for this test, I want to say if the total sales is greater than 20 million, and they also have to meet another condition or criteria, their years of service is more than 5 years, then go ahead and let's put in text, they get a promotion. So if I type in equals and I type in if, and there's the if, hit the tab key to pop it open, I only get one logical test. But if I go ahead and insert another function within the if function, that's called nesting a function within a function, because I need to get more out of the function than just one logical test. I need 2, you could do 3, 4, or as many as you want with the and function because it means that it has to meet all these conditions that I set up. So if I type in and, the first couple letters, there it is, and, it says checks whether all arguments are true and returns true if all arguments are true. How many arguments do you want? Well, as many as you want. Let's go ahead and hit the tab key to pop it open. All of a sudden now, it's not focusing on the if, it's focusing on the and function here, and you can have as many logical arguments as you want. You can see it says 1, 2, well, then it goes ... etc. So it has to have this cell, E6, wherein it's got to be greater than or equal to 20 million. That's one test. And then to go to the next part of the and function, the second test, hit the comma key on the keyboard. So now I'm in the logical test 2, and we got to say it's going to be D6 has got to be greater than 5 years of service. Okay, see if this makes sense. So the first test for the AND function is that it's got to be greater than 20 million for the total sales. And then also it has to be greater than 5 years of service. So two tests. It has to meet both. That's where AND comes in. It has to meet that, and if it doesn't, it comes out false. And then go ahead and close the parentheses. So now once we close it, we're outside of the AND function, and we're back into the if. So down below in the syntax, we got if, this logical test. Just one logical test? No. We went inside it and said AND. So there's two logical tests within the logical test. So it looks inside here and it says the AND, let's see what that's about. And Excel looks at this one and that one, and both of them have to be true. If both of them are true, then let's go to the next part in the if function. The value if true, so we hit the comma on the keyboard, now that's in bold. And we can say open quotes, promotion. And then to go to the false, hit the comma, now that's in bold. And then we can also do in quotes, fired. Let's go ahead and close the parentheses. So we have two sets. We have the inner, and then we have the outer for the if. And then go ahead and hit enter. Hey, he got a promotion because this met both conditions where it had to be greater than 20 million and greater than 5 years of service. So if I go ahead and select the cell and I want to copy it to the remainder of the cells down below for the rest of the employees, again, hover over the lower right hand corner, click and drag the black cross down. Oh boy, we're firing a lot of people. Let's just say if they made more than $20 million in sales, or they're here longer than 5 years, let's keep them on. We're kind of nice guys. So that's where we come into the OR function. The AND, let me come back up here, double click, had to meet both logical tests. The OR means it just has to meet one or the other. Or you can have more than two logical tests. You can have as many as you want. So if I come in here and let's delete this. So we're back to the beginning of the if function. We only get one logical test, but if I type in the OR function, and there you go, it says checks whether any of the arguments are true. Any of them. You can have 20 arguments. Just one of them has to be true. And then go ahead and hit the tab key to pop it open. You got one argument, two arguments, three arguments. You can go nuts. So again, the argument is that this cell has to be greater than or equal to 20 million. And let's go ahead and do a comma so we can go to the second test for the OR function. So it has to be greater than 20 million, or let's select that cell. It has to be greater than 5 years of service, okay? And then to go ahead and stop all these tests, we're going to close the parentheses. So you have the OR function with the first test, the second test for the logical test of the if function here, both of these. And if it meets one or the other, then promotion. If it doesn't meet either one of these, then that person's fired. So hit enter. Let's go ahead and select the cell, hover over the lower right hand corner, get the black cross, click and drag down, and only one's fired. So it's this one right here who didn't meet either or. They didn't get more than $20 million, nor were they over 5 years. Remember, I said it had to be more than 5 years, not equal to 5 years. So if you go ahead and double click, you can see right there the test D7, the cell right here, has to be more than 5, greater than 5. Or if I said equals, remember, put it on the right hand side of the greater than or less than symbol, hit enter, he gets the promotion. But then I get a little tag here that says, this formula is inconsistent. Why is it? Because you didn't use, when I double click, the equals in any of the other formulas, just this one. Let me hit the escape key, undo that, he's back to being fired. If you watched the previous training video on the if function, then you'll have an idea what I'm talking about here, because we're going to be doing what's called the nested if. First of all, nesting means to insert one function into another. The nested if is inserting an if function into an if function. How does that work? As you recall, the if function is performing a logical test. And see if this makes sense. For the employees that are now students, let's say they have to pass an exam to go ahead and get a promotion or a commission at our company. They've got the midterm and final and the average grade right here that I want to base the final grade upon. If they get 90 or more, it's an A, 80 or more, it's a B, or you can do your minuses and pluses if you want, but I'm going to keep it simple. So if I do the if function, perform the logical test, that if this average is 90 or more, give them an A. Well, it doesn't meet that. So remember, the first part of the if function is going to perform a logical test. So let's do equals if, and there it is right there. Hit the tab key to pop open the function, and it says, what's the logical test? Well, it's going to be this cell has got to be greater than, we'll say equal to as well, greater than or equal to 90. Then let's hit the comma on the keyboard to go to what to do if it's true. If it's true, let's do open quotes, give them an A, close quotes. If it's false, then what do we do next? Because they didn't meet the 90 or more, we can go ahead and say if it's false, let's perform another if. Well, if, we can go ahead and type in if, hit the tab key, and you see how I inserted that function into this one? So if it doesn't meet the first condition and it's false, let's say, okay, if it's false, then go ahead and check this condition. Go ahead and say if this is greater than or equal to 80, comma, open quotes, give them a B grade, close quotes, comma, and then if it doesn't meet that criteria and it's false, then we go ahead and say, okay, here's another if, hit the tab key to pop it open, again, the same cell, it's got to be greater than or equal to this time, let's do 70, and let's do comma so we can go to the next part of the syntax, true, we'll do C, comma, if it's false, we could do one more, but I'm thinking you're getting the point here. To go ahead and close it off, we could just say, look, if they don't get a C, anything less than that, we'll just say, if it's false, let's just finally end it and say anything less than that, you get an F. Now, before I go ahead and hit enter, we need to make sure that we have our order of operation and we have the equal number of closing parentheses. So I've got one here, let's close that one. So there's the first order. Now I got to go to the outer, let's close the second set of parentheses. Close the parentheses again, so I've got 3 on this side and 1, 2, 3 on that side, and let's hit enter. Hey, isn't that nifty? You got a B. Let's go ahead and hover over it. Go to the lower right hand corner so we can get the black autofill handle so we can click and drag to copy and paste that function down below. Hey, that's great. Did he get more than 90? Yes, so he got an A. Did anybody get less than 70? Well, if we made a mistake and we type in 69, zonk, he gets an F. Of course, that doesn't add up to the average here, but you get the point. The IFERROR function is used to eliminate Excel's default error expressions. Like this one, it's an ugly one. And if I handed this off to my boss, he's like, what the heck is that? I would say, hey, it's the divo error. The div is divided by, and you got the /0. So after it performs the calculation, if it's going to be divided by 0, it's going to say, hey, I can't do this. You don't divide things by 0, so you get the divo error expression. What does that mean to him? Does this guy get an average bonus size or what? So let's go ahead and take a look at this first before we go ahead and use the IFERROR function. And you can double click on it, and you can see that for the average ifs, and it's plural S, which means I can have more than one criteria range, more than one criteria, but we'll keep it simple. We just got one. So looking at the first part of this, it's in bold. It says, okay, what is the range that you want to average out? I went ahead and selected it, and then come over here, and it says, okay, what's the criteria range? It's going to be the same range. And for the criteria, it's going to be greater than 100,000, meaning that within this range, there's got to be at least one cell that's greater than 100,000, because if it's not, then it's got nothing to divide it by, so hence you get the 0 error. So if I hit the escape key and I just do something that's more than 100,000 in any one of these categories, videos, books, or so on, like 100,001, hit enter, there you go, you get the average. What's the average of 100,001? Well, it's one cell, so 1 into 100,001 is going to be the average bonus size. Let me hit undo. Since it didn't meet any of these, they're all less than 100,000, it's got 0 to divide by, so we get the errors. So what this means in translation to the front end, the boss here who sees this and goes, I know nothing about what this is saying. Let's go ahead and make it user-friendly form by double-clicking in the cell to bring up the function and click before the function here and type in if, and there it is. Got an arrow down to IFERROR, and it says, okay, return a value if the error expression is an error, and it is. Let's go ahead and hit the tab key to pop it open. So here's the value that it's looking at. You can look down below in the syntax, that's in bold. So click at the end, hit the comma so we can go to the value if error. So comma, and what is the error going to be? Open quotes, we can say no go on the bonus, close quote. And then we need to go ahead and close off our parentheses here because we have the first set, which is open and then close, then the second because the if error is looking inside of that. So we got the first one, then we need to go ahead and close it here, hit enter, no go on the bonus. So for us on the back end that do the programming here, us nerds and geeks, we understand the devo error, but for the boss, what is that? We can just say, hey, it's a no-go. The payment function, PMT, will calculate loan payments, like for a home, a car, a loan shark. Well, hopefully you don't go to a loan shark in any case. I formatted this part of the worksheet so I can make it look clean and organized, because what we're looking at here is to insert the payment function right there, and the result of the payment function, based upon these values, will be the interest rate, the number of payments, like if it's going to be 5 years, 60 months, the principal, the amount of the loan, will equal the total monthly payment. So let's go ahead and type in equals PMT, and there it is, calculates the payment for a loan based upon constant payments and a constant interest rate. Let's go ahead and hit the tab key to pop it open, and you get the syntax. And it says, okay, what's the rate? Well, it's going to be this cell right here. Now the interest rate is going to be divided by month, or over a year, 12 months. So after I select that cell, I want to go ahead and divide it, do a /12, and then go ahead and hit comma to go to the next part of the syntax, the number of payments, which is going to be in that cell. And then finally, the principal, or the principal value, comma, is going to be that cell. And then that's it. Hit enter, and there you go. Now, of course, nothing's coming up because we have nothing in the cell here for it to calculate. So let's go ahead and type in the interest rate. Let's type in 3. And you can see we've already got the percent there. Hit the tab key. So when I come back and I select it, you can see up here on the home tab in the number group is by percentage. If you don't have it set up for percentage, you can of course always change the number format. So that's 3%, which is very low interest rate. Number of payments is going to be 60, which is 5 years. Hit the tab key. And then the total amount for, like, let's say a new Lexus, maybe around 50,000. Hit enter. And you've got it as a negative number, accounting, it's in parentheses, so it's going to be almost $900 a month. Sweet. And because we have it set up here, we can do any number of scenarios and say, well, what if I had it at 4%? It goes up just a little bit. And then the number of payments, if I went out to 70, it goes down. You can go ahead and play within those 3 cells there to find out exactly the monthly payment you're looking for. If you want to view the functions within your worksheet without having to select the cell and then looking up in the formula bar or even printing off the functions, there's a couple things you can do. One is you can hold down the control key and hit the tilde key, and that tilde key is just above the tab key. So control tilde. Let's go ahead and scroll over, and there you go. And then now you can go ahead and view the function here. Of course, you still have to select the cell because the cell is only yay big to be able to look up in the formula bar and see the remainder of the function, or better yet, hover in between the 2 column headers until you can see arrows pointing in opposite directions. Then double click really fast to do a best fit to the longest function within that column. And then what you see here, when you come up here and click on the File tab and go down to Print, is what's going to come out of your printer. But okay, I know. I've got blank columns here, so it's not all printing on the same page, but we can worry about fixing that later. Let's go ahead and go to page 3. And there you go. Let me come over here and click on the Zoom In button. And everything I can see there, because I have this set up to fit the longest function within the column. Let's go ahead and go back. And let's do Control tilde so we can collapse it now. That's one way. The other way, let me go ahead and select the cell here that has the function. You can see up here in the formula bar is to go ahead and double click within it and click at the beginning of the function and add an apostrophe. It's just hitting the key to the left of the Enter key on the keyboard and then hit Enter. And notice that the apostrophe disappears, but when you select the cell up in the formula bar, it's there. This way I can control, instead of all or nothing, the entire worksheet by Control tilde and reveals all the functions. This one just reveals one at a time, whatever function I want revealed. Just come up here and add the apostrophe and hit Enter. Why would I want to do that? Well, maybe if it's a learning lesson to somebody else to say, hey, these are the functions that I'm using, and you want to be able to display it because maybe this is a web page, or maybe it's an image here. And if it's an image, nobody can play inside an image, right? So you can go ahead and maybe even copy this and paste it over to the right-hand side, and then just leave these alone and display the function there. And of course, you're not going to see the value here until you get rid of that apostrophe. So let's come up here in the formula bar, backspace, and we're back to where we started. As you recall in earlier training videos, we learned about the sum, count, and average functions. Well, here it's got a twist to it. In other words, we're not just going to automatically add up, count, or average a range of cells unless a condition or criteria has been met. So hence you got the suffix of if. So it would be sum if this condition is met, count if this condition is met, or average if. You can also have a plural version of it if it has to meet more than one condition or criteria. So it could be sum ifs, count ifs, and average ifs. So for my example here, I've got my database where I have the essential oils, the category, if it's a blend, yes or no, the price of it, how much is in stock, and the size of it in milliliters. And you can see when I scroll down, I don't have that much there. So the first exercise is to go ahead and add up the total oils in stock that are blends. So here's the stock, and here whether or not it's a blend. So which function are we going to use? Is it the sum, the count, or the average? Well, the key word is add. So let's do sum. Now, we're not just going to add up the total in stock because that would just be the sum function. So we're going to use the sum if. So just add up the oils that are in stock if it's a blend. Yes, 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 and yes. So let's go ahead and come up here, click in the adjacent cell to the left-hand side of the exercise and hit equals and do sum, and there it is, arrow down, if, and you can see in the pop-up adds the cells specified by a given condition or criteria. So with it selected, go ahead and hit the tab key to pop open the function so we can see the syntax, and it says, okay, where's the range that we want to go ahead and look at, and then for that range, the criteria. So the range is going to be blends, right? Go ahead and click and drag to select it, and then the criteria that it has to meet for that range, to get over to the next part of the syntax, that argument, hit the comma on the keyboard, and it goes to criteria, is going to be open quotes, yes, close quotes, because we're looking for those essential oils that are blends, right? Go ahead and hit the comma so we can go to the sum range and say, okay, if it equals yes, then come over here to the exact same range, and as a cross-reference, if it's yes, then it's going to pick that cell, and if it's yes here, pick that cell and add up only those cells that have the blend yes. So click and drag to select it, and then go ahead and hit enter, and the total's 31. So let's go ahead and verify. So we're counting up what's in stock, right? But only those essential oils that are blends. So there's a yes. Holding down the control key, I'm going to select the next yes. There's 3. Let me come down here. Yes is 8. And then yes is 8 here. And then the sum of the selected cells down the status bar says it's 31. So hey, it checks out. Cool. Let's go ahead and do the next one here. And you'll see a pattern. As long as you know what you want as far as adding up or counting up or averaging a range of cells, and the keywords are right there for adding, counting, and average, then it's just a matter of, okay, what's the condition or criteria? Now, this one, again, is just the singular sum if. It's not plural because we just had one condition that needed to be met, whether it was a blend or not, before it went ahead and added up everything that was in stock for the blends. So this next exercise is going to count up the total number of oils that are calming, non-blends, and a price less than $50. So we've got how many conditions? 1, 2, 3. So instead of the singular count if, we need the plural count ifs. So we can keep adding as many conditions as we want, which, well, by the way, it's only 3 here. So let's go ahead and hit equals, count, and it's all the way down. So I'm going to arrow down. You can see in the pop-up, counts up the number of cells specified by a given set of conditions or criteria. With it selected, hit the tab key to pop open the function, and it says, okay, go ahead and select the first criteria range, and then what's the criteria for that range? So we're going to look at it, and it says it's calming. So let's see. We're looking over here in the category. So that's a criteria range. Go ahead and click and drag to select it. And then to get to the next argument in the syntax, go ahead and hit comma. Now that's in bold. Now it says, okay, what's the criteria for that range? Well, we're going to go ahead and do open quotes, and we're going to type in calming. And then comma, okay, so what's the next criteria? Well, it has to be a non-blend. So let's go ahead and select the range for blends, and then to go to the criteria for that range, comma, now that's in bold, and it's going to be open quotes, and it's going to be no. a non-blend. Okay, and then we've got the last one, a price less than $50. So let's go ahead and do comma. And we're looking at the price here. So there's the criteria range. Click and drag to select it. Comma. And then it's got to be less than 50. So let's do open quotes, the less than symbol, type in 50, close quotes, and hit enter. And we only have one that meets all those conditions. Do you want to check it out and verify? Okay, first of all, calming. How many do we have? We've got these three right here, right? I don't see any others, so that was easy. And then of the three, how many are non-blends? Well, we've got two right here, so it limits it down of the three calming to these two right here. And then how many of these two are less than 50? It's just that one right there. Sweet. Okay, let's come back up here and do the final exercise, which is to find the average cost of oils which are antibacterial. Now, if it's just one condition, I can just go ahead and use the average if, but I've got one. Non-blends is 2, and 10 milliliters or less, so that's 3 conditions. So since I'm beyond 1, I'm going to go ahead and have to use the plural average ifs. So equals average, and arrow down to ifs, finds the average arithmetic mean for the cells specified by a given set of conditions or criteria. With it selected, hit the tab key on the keyboard to pop it open, and it says, okay, what is the average range that we're looking at? We want to average the cost of essential oils, so this is the cost here, and that's going to be our average range. Click and drag to select it, and then go ahead and hit the comma on the keyboard to say, okay, we're going to average this range, but it's going to be dependent upon the criteria, and so the criteria is that it's got to be antibacterial. So let's go ahead and select that range, and then hit comma, and then the criteria for that range is going to be open quotes, antibacterial. And then comma, okay, the next one is a non-blend. So let's go ahead and select that range. And then do comma, open quotes, it has to be no, a non-blend. And then comma, and we got to do 10 milliliters or less. So let's go ahead and, I'm not sure I'm selecting the top one there. There we go. And hover over the lower right-hand corner and bring that down. So they all ought to be from row 8. There's 8, 8, 8, and 8. So for the range here, let's do comma. And then let's do open quotes. It has to be less than 10 milliliters. Close quotes, hit enter. And so the average price for every essential oil that is antibacterial, so we've got 1, 2 here, 3, I'm using the control key, that is a non-blend, so this is the only one that's non-blend, and it's 10 milliliters or less, so the average of $28 is $28, right? So we've got 1 divided by 28 gives us the same as the price. And there you go. Now, like I said, if you wanted to, you can go ahead, for the sake of following up, you could use the plural SUMIFs for a single criteria that has to be met. And you can see up here in the formula bar, it's a SUMIF. So if I go ahead and hit equals sum, and go down to ifs, hit the tab key to pop it open, and then it says, okay, what's the sum range? Add up all the oils in stock that are blends. So we want to go ahead and add up what's in stock, comma, but the criteria range means that it has to be a blend. So select it, comma, and then define the criteria, which is open quotes, yes, close quotes, and then hit enter, and we still get 31. You see, with the SUMIFs, let me double click, in the syntax here, you can go from just the first set of conditions to a second set, but you can stop at the first set, so it doesn't matter if you use the singular SUMIF or the plural SUMIFs if it's one condition. It's up to you. Let's go ahead and hit the escape key to pop back out of that. I have the total in sales for each employee that they made from January through April, and I want to take that total and use the lookup function to look up that value down below in the mini table. Now, for the lookup, it's going to always be a mini table with the one row to look it up and compare against and the one row to return it. Or it could be columns. In other words, I can go ahead and take this and flip it and transpose it and have 2 columns. So I'm going to keep it as is and say, okay, take this value by using the lookup function and compare it within this range, known as the vector range. And then when it finds out that, okay, it's 500 but less than 800, it's going to return the value in the same position in the adjacent row, or if it was, 2 columns, in the adjacent column. So when it looks at this and it says, okay, it's 500 but less than 800, in the next adjacent row, it's going to say it's silver. If it's 800 but less than 1,000, gold. If it's 1,000 or more, it's going to be diamond. So let's go ahead and hit equals on the keyboard and type in the first couple letters for look. There we go. You can see in the pop-up it says looks up a value either from a one row or one column range or from an array. In other words, you get two options. Let me show you. With the function selected, go ahead and hit the tab key on the keyboard to pop it open. Hey, and you've got two to choose from. You can use the vector function or the array. Now we're going to focus on the vector because the array, Microsoft recommends to not use that, but to use the vertical lookup or horizontal lookup instead, because this form of lookup, the array, is provided for compatibility with other spreadsheet programs. So let's go ahead and keep it simple and just focus on the first one here. And to do that, we're just going to go ahead and ignore the one down below. So what's the first argument in the syntax? It says, okay, what's the lookup value? You can either type it in and type in 562.01 or select the cell that contains the value and then hit the comma key on the keyboard so we can advance to the next argument, and it's the lookup vector or range. So we want to take this and look it up in that range, and then after it takes that value and looks in that range and it says, okay, we found out that it's equal to or more than 500 but less than 800, let's go to the next range by hitting the comma so we can go to the result vector, and the results is going to be this range for silver. So let's hit enter and there you go. Let's go ahead and quickly copy and paste this down below so we can call it a day and not have to retype it in for each one. So select the cell that contains the function, hover over the lower right hand corner until you get the black cross to click and drag and copy that function down, and okay, what's the deal? Go ahead and select any one of these and double click on it, and you can see by the selection, as far as being relative, the first part of the function is correct. We want to go from, instead of staying in H8, the one above, we want to advance to the next row, 9. So that works, but the problem with the other parts of the function is that they're advancing down one by one as well. So instead of staying up here for the lookup vector, it's down below 2 rows and also the result vector. So when we copy and paste it down, it keeps moving down and we want it to stay, to always be the same range. The only thing we don't want to stay is the lookup value. So let's go ahead and hit the escape key. And all this can be found or learned in my absolute value training video. So you want to watch that in case if you don't know what I'm talking about. So go ahead and double click on the first function that we got right and say, okay, when we copy and paste this to adjacent cells, then make sure that this range, you can see it's in red, stays. It doesn't advance down when we go down row by row when we copy and paste. So for I13, hit the F4 key on the keyboard to add the dollar signs to the absolute values in front of the I and the 13. For the I to say stay in the same column, for the row 13, stay in the same row. Let's do it for K13, F4. And then also for the result vector, F4 to add the dollar signs, and K14 to add the dollar signs. Of course, you don't have to use F4. You can actually type in the dollar sign in front of the column reference and the row, but hey, F4 is just faster for me. Hit enter. Let's go ahead and try this again. Hover over the lower right hand corner and double click really fast, and hey, it works. Double click on any one of these to make sure that it's still referencing the same row when it's looking up the value to compare against for the lookup vector and also the result. And we get accurate results. Now let's see what happens when I change this. I know it's got the formula up here, but if I go ahead and overwrite it and type in 1000 and hit enter, there we go, diamond. Or I can undo that, just update the values for March and type in 10,000, hit enter, and it updates there, which in turn updates the level. The lookup function says they're in the diamond. When it comes to doing cross-referencing with the database, if it's small enough, it's probably not that big of a deal to say, okay, the model is 200, there we go. So that's the row. The column, let's say it's for the year 2004, is right there, not too bad. You can imagine if you had a huge database, that would be kind of a pain. So we've got the vertical lookup and horizontal lookup functions. The vertical lookup will look up a value that you choose in the leftmost column, and the horizontal will be in the topmost row. Now you could say, okay, well that's not the topmost row. You can choose the topmost row. In any case, for this example, we're going to be using the vertical lookup to look up the model here. And because I'm looking up the model and getting the year, I want the part number next to the label, so I'm going to insert the function right next to the label here. And let's hit equals VL for vertical lookup. You can see in the pop-up it says it looks up a value in the leftmost column here of a table and then returns a value in the same row for a column that you specify. Now by default, the table must be sorted in ascending order. And what it means by that is that whatever you're looking up the value in that column that it's looking in this case for vertical lookup, make sure that if it's numbers, it's sorted from smallest to largest ascendingly, or if it's text, again from A to Z. Because if it's not in ascending order, you're going to get erroneous results. So let's go ahead and, with it selected, hit the Tab key to pop open the function so we can look at the syntax. And the first argument says, what's the lookup value? You can go ahead and type in 200 or select the cell right there, then hit comma on the keyboard, and then it says, go ahead and select or type in the table. If it's a huge table, then I recommend that you type in the first cell of the table, A4, colon, which means through, and the last cell of the table is J15, comma. So we can go to the next argument, and it says, okay, what column do you want to return the value in for the cross-reference? Because right now it's 200 looking in that row, and then the column we want to return is not going to be by labels here, it's going to be by the actual column number with the table that we have selected. So we start over to the left-hand side and we count, beginning with 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So if we want it to return the year 2000, that's the second column, so we type in 2, hit enter, and there you go. So it's looking up model 200, there it is, in the second column, which is year 2000, and hey, it worked. So I can come down here and look up another model for the same year, 250, hit enter, and there you can see 250, the same year. Now if we want to update the year, then we have to come down and double click inside the cell and change it from column 2 to column 3, so we have the year 2001, hit enter. So for 250 over here in column 3, there we go. Now you ought to know by default that the vertical lookup is doing a comparison of greater than or equal to with the value here. So in other words, if I type in 201, you can see that 201 is not there, but when I hit enter, it still returns a part number because it's looking at 201 and it's saying, okay, it's greater than 200 but less than 250, so I'll stay with 200. So looking over here in the third column, or 2001, it pulls in that value, which if you got to be exact to get the correct part number, you could hand out the wrong part number if you don't update the vertical lookup function to look for an exact match. And how do you do it? Well, just come down here and double click on the cell to go inside the lookup function and go to the AND, where you're just before the last parentheses there, and go ahead and hit comma, and you can see you've got 1, 2, 3, and then the fourth argument here. And by default, even though it doesn't say true, it's going to do an approximate match. So let's go ahead and select false, double click on that to pop it in, then hit enter. And if it can't find an exact match, you get not available or not applicable, and that way we don't hand out a part number that's not going to work for somebody. Now, not only can you look up numbers, but you can also look up text. So if I type in blue, hit enter, and let's come up here so we can have it look up blue. Type in blue, hit enter. Hey, there we go. And as far as text goes, for the vertical lookup, let me double click. You don't have to have an exact match because, you know, blue is blue, right? So it's not going to do a greater than blue, which is red, or less than blue, which is yellow. I'm making that up. There's no such thing as that. Okay, let's go ahead and delete false and hit enter, and it still returns it for that row blue for the column that we specified, which is this one right here, 2001. Let me go ahead and hit undo a couple of times. And if you want, now this one is looking up in column 3, which is year 2001. If you want to help yourself out just a little bit, you can say this is going to be for 2002, the part number, 2003. I mean, you can keep going down, right? So what we want to do is let's go ahead and type in a part number that we do have. Let's do 200, hit enter. And this one right here is for 2001, so we can just go ahead and type in 2001. And so if we go down to the next one, if we want to copy and paste it, we got to be careful because by default, the function is relative. So when we go from here down to the next cell, it's going to move the table down one row. And then when we go to the next one, it's going to move the table down again, as you recall in our absolute value training video. So let me go ahead and hover over the lower right-hand corner and show you this. To copy that function, when you see the black cross, click and drag down and it copies down. And when I double click on it, you can see that the table doesn't include the top row or the model 100, it keeps shifting down. And also, the lookup value has gone from the cell here, E17, down a couple of rows to E19. So what we need to do is hit the escape key, go back to the original function, double click, and say, look, the value is always going to be in that cell, E17, right there. So click before it, hit the F4 key on the keyboard to add the dollar signs. So we've got a constant for the column E and for the row 17, so it's always going to stay there, E17, and then also for the table, F4 so we can add the dollar signs to the beginning of the cell for the table, and then the last cell in the table, hit F4 again to add the dollar signs, hit enter, and then go ahead and select it, hover over the lower right hand corner and double click really fast, and there you go. So now the function is working accurately, except we need to update it. So this function references 2002 or column 4. So we double click, we say 4. The next one's going to double click and be 5. And there you go. So when somebody looks up a model number and says, I can use any part number from the years 2001 to 2003, just type in 250, hit enter, and say, okay, well, which one? And if you got your costs over to the right-hand side, you can look up and say, oh my gosh, this one is going to cost at least get the 2001. If that's compatible, you're good to go. If your database is small enough, it's not that difficult to go ahead and do cross-referencing. In other words, I want to look up the year 2008 to get my part number for, let's say, model number 100, and it's going to be that right there. Now you can imagine if you have a huge database that could be a problem. So we've got the horizontal and vertical lookup functions. As you recall in the previous training video, the vertical lookup function looks up the value here in the leftmost column. But since I'm not looking up the model, I'm looking up the year, I want to look in the topmost row. So there's the horizontal lookup. And I want to be able to get the result, the part number, next to the label here. So I'm going to insert the function next to the part number. And I'm going to hit equals so I can begin typing in HL to get the HLOOKUP. And you can see in the pop-up it says it's going to look for a value in the top row of the table and return the value in the same column from a row that I specify. So it's looking up 2008 in this column, and then I'll specify the row maybe for model number 400. So let's go ahead with it selected, hit the tab key to pop open the function, and then what's the lookup value? It's going to be that cell right there, or you can type in 2008, doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and select the cell, hit comma so we can go to the next argument, and then it says, okay, where's the table? Well, it begins with cell A4, colon, and it goes through the last cell, which is J15. There you go, comma. And then what's the row index number? Now it's not saying the row label, which if I'm looking at, model number 150, that's the label. The index number starting from the top row begins with 1, 2, 3. So it's going to be row 3. Type in 3, hit enter, and there you go. So row 3 for 2008 is 525177. Cool. You can go ahead and update the year 2009, hit enter, and there you go. It's still for the same row unless I come down here and update the row, double click and say, okay, it's not row 3, it's now row 2, hit enter, in which case that's the second row here of the database for model number 100 for the year 2009. Now the problem that you'll run into if you're not aware of this is that the horizontal lookup is doing a greater than or equal to comparison with the value that it's looking up. In other words, if I don't have 2007, let me go ahead and right click on the column header and delete that column. If I type in the year 2007 and I hit enter, why is it giving me a part number? It shouldn't. Well, because it's doing an approximate. So when it looks up 2007, well, it's greater than 2006 but less than 2008, so it goes back to 2006 and it says, okay, this is the column that we want because it's an approximate. And you can see the part number for row 1, there you go, 404515, and it's right there. So what you need to do if you want to fix that so you don't hand out a part that nobody can use, then go ahead and double click in the cell to bring up the HLOOKUP syntax. And we've got 1, 2, 3 that we worked on. The last one here is towards the end, so let's go ahead and click before the parentheses, hit comma so we can bring up the approximate match or the exact match. Now by default, it doesn't say true here, it just assumes that if you don't choose false that it's going to be an approximate. So let's go ahead and do an exact match and double click on false, hit enter, and there we go. If it's not there, we get not applicable, not available, and we don't hand out a part number that nobody can use. Now you can also look up by text, like if I type in the color red, and I need it defined red in here, so let me type up red up here, and there you go. And as far as the function goes for an exact match, it doesn't have to be exact. I mean, because red is red, it's already exact as it is, right? So you can double click and get rid of the false here, argument, hit enter, and it still pulls up the same number there in the first row. Now this is looking up for the model 100, so you can type in 100 and go down to 150 and 200 if you want to make it maybe easier on yourself instead of having to double click every time to update the row. let me hit the escape key. You can go ahead and type in the year here and have the models down below in case if somebody comes in and says, hey, I've got the year, but any one of these models will work or be compatible. So let me come up here and change this back to 2005. And we want to look at 2005. And there it is for the model number 100. So what I need to do is I want to go ahead and copy and paste the function down below. I mean, you can go ahead and retype in the function, but for me, if I have a lot of models here, it's easier for me to copy and paste. But you got to keep in mind that when you copy and paste the function down, that it's going to go ahead and, with the relative reference, move the value from E17 to the next row down because we're copying one row down. And also the table is going to move down one row. Then when I come down here, that's 2 rows, so it's going to move the lookup down 2 rows, so it's not looking in this cell, it's looking on that cell. Let me show you. Hover over the lower right hand corner until you can see a black cross, then click and drag down, and there's the errors that we're getting. And you can see when you double click on one of them that you can see that the table shifted down 2 rows because we copied it down 2 rows, and also the lookup value is down to the part number that it's looking up for the model number 100. Okay, that's not going to work. Let me hit the escape key, go back to the original function here, double click, and say, okay, look, when I copy it down, don't change the cell here for the lookup value. It's always going to be cell E17. So click in front of E17, hit the F4 key on the keyboard to add the $signs for the absolute values to say, stay doggy, stay, don't move when I copy you and paste you down below. And then also for the table, the beginning cell is A4, hit the F4 key to add $signs. Then the last cell in the table is I15, hit F4 to add $signs, hit enter. Go ahead and select the cell, click and drag the black cross down, and there we go. The only thing that we need to do now to make it accurate is that, okay, row 150, or the model number 150 is row what? 1, 2, 3. So we double click, update that to 3, and then this one's going to be 4, double click, update that to 4. So when somebody comes in and says, okay, I need a part for the year 2002, and hit enter, automatically gives me all the part numbers for the different models here. And if it's something that's compatible, like let's say for models 1, 150, and 200, then I suppose you wouldn't have to have, the different model numbers, but in any case, it's your database. You can go ahead and say, yeah, we can get you that one. That one costs a lot less, but that one's compatible, and it's even less than the part number for model 150. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please see the description below this video.